All right, everybody, sit down. Sit down. Sit down. Down at the back. Keep sitting. I can wait. Bend your knees, lad. Bend them. Oh, my goodness. Oh, okay, sure, perch. If all you can manage is to perch, perching will have to count. Now, yesterday we showed you a video about what not to do if a person rushes you dressed as Henry Somerset, 12th Duke of Beaufort, brandishing some secateurs and wailing about Marxism. Right, we want to see if any of you have retained any of that information, like any of it at all. Yes, Rasmussen, your hand is up. What would you like to say?
Is the answer pour soup on him?
May I ask, Rasmussen, do you have any soup with you right now?
No.
And have you, at any point in, let's say, the last 14 weeks, in any way, shape or form, had any soup with you at all?
No, but maybe I had a half-eaten pudding cup. I just can't remember if that was within the last 14 weeks or not.
Well, a half-eaten pudding cup isn't some soup, is it, Rasmussen?
Well, no.
Yes, Carpathia, what would you like to add?
What if you heated the pudding up?
The point is not the temperature of the foodstuff. The point is, why would the solution to such a common occurrence as being rushed by someone dressed as Henry Somerset, 12th Duke of Beaufort, brandishing some secateurs and wailing about Marxism, be to pour soup on them when we have quite clearly established in that back and forth just there the general absence of soup with people in an average, normal, daily way?
What about a can of guava halves?
Again, probably the same likelihood that you would have that as you would have soup. In fact, some may say that statistically speaking, soup is probably more likely than guava halves.
Not gazpacho soup. That's a fairly rare soup.
Thank you, Carpathia. I'm sure the likelihood of someone having guava halves over a can or sachet of gazpacho soup is a fair assumption, but not pertinent to the question in hand.
A cockatiel, then. Throw a cockatiel at them.
All right, Rasmussen, that's all your turns used up, and if you make another idiotic suggestion, then I will have your thighs cleft in twain.
What will you use?
I'm sorry, what?
Well, what will you use to cleft my thighs in twain? You don't appear to be carrying anything sharp enough for such an altercation.
Quiet, Rasmussen. Now.
Well, I'm just saying, here you are criticising me for my lack of soup.
That's not what I was doing.
And yet, when you make a bold threat, such as cleaving my thighs in two, nary a blade, sharp object, or spiky thing is to be found.
Well, in the third drawer down of my desk, I have a highly polished and somewhat sharpened Chef and Stem Gem Strawberry Huller, $6.95 from all good haberdashers, and I could probably have a damn good go with that. Anyway, enough of this mad bollocks. What the video clearly showed was the aforementioned disguised assailant came running at the protagonist, blathering about how the capitalist system inherently contains the seeds of its own destruction, and from out of her purse she produces... Okay, class, so what you were just watching was a video of Leonard Wapp Couplet trying to teach his class about the dangers of a person rushing you dressed as Henry Somerset, 12th Duke of Beaufort, brandishing some secateurs and wailing about Marxism. What was he doing wrong when it came to controlling his students? Was it his insistence on wearing a salmon-coloured shirt? No, although I think you're on the right track. Lionel, what about you? You always have some interesting insights into stuff like this.
Sorry, sir, I wasn't listening.
Why ever not?
I don't know if you can tell, but I had my ears removed yesterday as a bet.
Well, how are you hearing me now?
Pardon?
How are you hearing me now?
Oh, I see. I read tits.
Don't you mean you read lips?
No, sir. Tits. I read tits.
So you're getting all that I'm saying from the way my... tits are jiggling?
About 75 degrees, sir, with a chance of storms in the evening.
Marvellous. That was a clip from Arnold Vosloo's new production of Kermit the Pretzel's play All in a Day's Walk, an in-depth and frequently ludicrous look at the Chinese kitchen implement industry in the 1970s. And now on Radio Flange Goblet, It's the After Movie Diner, which, after 339 episodes, still can't decide what it is or when it's coming out. Unfortunately, like an unwelcome direction at a Just Wear Speedos barbecue and swing dance afternoon, it's coming out now.
You're listening to the sweet sounds of the After Movie Diner. Support us at patreon.com/After Movie Diner. Or I'll punch you in the teats. Rate and review us on iTunes, Earthling. And now, here's your host, John Cross.
Hello and welcome to the After Movie Diner. And we're back. That's the reason.
Is that
for
the new
celebration.
opening music? Is that the opening theme tune? Because I have to say, I like it. I do. I just feel like needs a bit of polish. You know what
Needs
I mean?
a bit of polish.
Needs a little bit of fairy dust.
Maybe what I'll do is I'll send that clip of me doing that noise to our mutual friend Johnny Cole and see if we can't add some trumpets onto it.
Remix. You know what? Actually, that's not a terrible idea because I bet he could do something quite cool with that.
Probably. So how's your week been, Bumface?
Yeah, all right, not bad. I'm trying to think if I've done anything in the least bit exciting. I don't think so. No, I've just been working. Yep, that's been it. I've just been working.
Okay.
I've had some nice walks around the neighborhood.
Nice.
Done a little bit of writing, so not bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have I've come up with a new tagline, which is the After Movie Diner. We're a true crime podcast. It's a true crime. We're still a podcast.
I did like that. I saw that in the social media, in the meme sphere.
In the meme sphere.
And I like it. I think it's a good tagline.
Is there an ice cream van going past your window at 9:30 at night?
And all it fucking plays is Pop Goes the Weasel. That's it.
Oh my God. Can you imagine?
All I want to do is lean out the window and go, buy another fucking tune. Every night he's out there playing Pop Goes the fucking Weasel.
Now, what's funny is it irritates you, and obviously you hear it a few times a day. He hears it all day, every day, for hours and hours and hours.
That's
I'm assuming it's a he. It could be a her. It could be a her. I'm assuming.
No, it's a he. It's a he. But you're right. He's obviously quite mad. And so the question is, do you want your ice cream served to you by somebody who's been driven mad
by Pop Goes the Weasel,
by his own ice cream music?
Do you think that ice cream people who run ice cream vans could purchase, much in the way that we used to in 2003 with ringtones when that was a thing? Do you think that you can purchase like uploads? Like, do you think there's like an ice cream intranet that just has all the things that you need to be an ice cream person?
Yeah, you know what? He's got absolutely no excuse for not having another tune. Like, it
really
can't
does.
be difficult to find one.
In 2021, it can't be difficult.
So he's lazy and mad.
And mad.
Again, not lazy and insane are two qualities I would not want in somebody serving ice cream to my children.
Unless it's one of those things, because we all have those things in our life where we go, oh yeah, I got to get that fixed. Right. And we say that. And then like we're in the middle of jerry rigging something so that it works. And we go, I must just buy that sprocket so I don't have to jerry rig it next time. And we never end up buying the sprocket because we kind of go, the jerry rig will do. You know what I mean?
I do.
So maybe it's like that. Maybe every day around 3 p.m. when he's been listening to Pop Goes the Bleeding Weasel for 4 hours or whatever, he goes, oh, I really must buy another fucking tune. And then he gets home at the end of the day, passes out in a bed, in a bed of dollar bills and whatever, filth.
Used tissues,
dollar bills and filth. And wakes up the next morning at like 5 to 11 just before his run starts. And he goes, oh, fuck, bollocks. Scrabbles on his ice cream gear, gets in the van. And then again at 3 p.m. he's like, oh, bollocks, I forgot to buy a new tune. And maybe he's been doing that for like 12 years.
In which case, Yeah, he's mad, lazy, and not very good at running a business. Again, not quality.
And a serial masturbate.
Yeah. Actually, I was going with because he's crying himself to sleep every night. But it does work. It does work, Steve.
Okay, then. So we did get some.
I know. I'm anxious. I'm anxious to hear it, mate.
We got an email from our wonderful Edinburgh-based Shed enthusiastic after movie diner fan Robin Doyle with the subject line of Shednannigans, which I'm a big fan of. We got a comment on our episode 331 Toy Soldiers episode, which, by the way, has nothing to do with Toy Soldiers. So it's just a completely non sequitur comment. Okay. And then we got a comment from, it might be from the same person, but they've changed their name. This might be a bot. Who knows? On our episode 338, which was last week's episode, Willy's Wonderland, a YouTube listener by the name of Adolf Oliver Nipple wrote us a very long comment, which I'll read, but then also commented, it's got the same image, but now goes by the name of A. Nelsex, spelled Nellsechs.
That sounds like he likes to change his name every now and then, presumably.
Yeah. Or he has multiple Google accounts, or it's a bot. Either way, bots have got more inventive because this is a stunner of a comment that I'll be reading out. What would you like first? Would you like Adolf Oliver Nipple's comment on YouTube, or would you like
I feel like
Shednannigans?
I feel like Shed-based loyalty should be rewarded by being first up. That's what I think.
Oh, I thought we'd end on a high note with Shednannigans. That's how I look.
Do you feel Shednannigans is a high note? I'm down with that.
Oh, I've read this email multiple times, and it is a high note. So we're going to start with Adolf Oliver Nipple's comment on Willy's Wonderland.
Okay.
Adolf Oliver Nipple on YouTube writes, I understand what you said about taking a break. I wanted to take a break as well from watching movies and playing video games. I recently went on a trip with my friend during the pandemic to see many places on a train. Was great. And I would like to go more out in nature. And there will always be movies and TV shows when I come back. But I would like to go more out there. Being an introvert and having social anxiety, I just felt guilt in not going out as much and would devour movies and games for that effect of not seeing places or going to social outings. And so I just want to minimize media watching and just go outside and just live. So I would like to at least see filming locations of movies and go to museums and different attractions and states in my lifetime. So thanks for saying that, because I feel the same. Nature is life. That's my motto. There are 2 quotes from Ralph Waldo Emerson I would like to share with nature enthusiasts, which is, the health of the eye seems to demand a horizon. We are never tired so long as we can see far enough. Ralph Waldo Emerson, Nature, Chapter 3, Beauty, 1836. The other one is, but if a man would be alone, let him look at the stars. The rays that come from those heavenly worlds will separate between him and vulgar things. Rage a fag. I understand that means sig. I think this is in reference to what you said. I understand that means sig, but in the States, it's basically a bad thing to say to someone. So just say sig or something like that. Why don't you call it a spader? I just spader a smoked. I don't know. Anyway, will Dr. Action ever come back? I would like to hear more of those commentaries. Those are the best, like Babylon with Kevin Smith. They do commentaries on Batman 60s show, which I hear from time to time. Or you could do more commentaries in the future. I miss those old action films, or it would be cool to have that podcast be in the same podcast feed, just called like a different segment. The After Movie Diner podcast presents Dr. Action, the Kick-Ass Kid commentaries. On my review of today's Willy Wonderland, which is basically a fan film on Five Nights at Freddy's, which you can watch the gameplay on YouTube. But to get a basic idea, it plays like an arcade game where you are a security guard and you would hear sounds on a night shift at arcades, which you are the night shift of. And you would press buttons to close doors so the animatronics wouldn't come towards you, but they somehow move slowly, so you would have to see the video cameras Casino Royale style when Craig Bond sees videotapes. But yeah, that's basically the gist. And I remember when the game came out, which was in college, me and my friend thought of possible actors that would be good at a five night at Freddy's, and we were bouncing around names. I said Keanu Reeves, and we both agreed that that would be an awesome choice. But I'm glad many years later to get Cage, which is the weirdest actor to make these parts watchable. Can you imagine Willis in this movie? I will sit in the back, thank you very much. But I thought it was great and agreed with everything you said, but I enjoyed myself once I knew what I was going in for. Thanks for reviewing it, and can't wait to see what you. I can't wait to see what to hear for next time. Spader is not coming this year, which is sad, but maybe for the finale you can see the last 2 seasons of The Office, because everything we saw as Sleazy Spader is all in there. And I just have to see more of his films to know which finale would be best to end his run on. But The Office Season 2 matches everything up. It's basically the end game scenario of all the movies of his we were watching. Hopefully someone can give you a copy or ship to both of you to watch, and maybe review The Office and the British show in general, because that was an amazing show. Thank you, and hope all is well. Sorry for the long message, but I'm bored.
Well, I agree with him. I loved Spader in the last 2 seasons of The Office. He was terrific. He's absolutely made those seasons worth watching. They were otherwise okay, but he was spectacularly good. And him playing like an aging Lothario who's borderline disgusted with the inanity and idiocy surrounding him did seem to fit pretty well with exactly how you would imagine Spader would end up at the end of his long film career.
What I liked about that message was it veered all over the place in the best possible way.
Like us, mate.
Like us.
Also, I like the way that he doesn't like me. That's my favourite bit. He's like, could we have more of the other bloke who's not that bloke?
Oh, Dr. Action and the Kick-Ass Kid. So right. to answer that question, I don't know if Dr. Action and the Kick-Ass Kid will ever come back. I have to say, much like Sleazy Spader Springtime, whether it's my brain or what it is, but it gets to a certain point where there's only so many comments to make. Like, we've done 100 commentaries on 80s and 90s action movies and just about covered every 80s and 90s straight-to-video action star you can think of, and then some. So my feeling is, like, what more can we say? You know, rinsing and repeating gets a bit boring for us. It might be great for the listeners, but for us, it's just like, well, didn't we say all that we needed to say about Spader? Just in the same way that I feel like Dr. Action and I said all that needs to be said about 80s and 90s action films. Also, I feel like if there was any enthusiasm for that show to come back from its creators, Doc and myself, then it would be happening. However, it's not happening. So read into that what you will. So I apologize for that. Same as I apologize for Spader. But sometimes you have to understand that podcasts are eternal. They live out there. If you're missing Sleazy Spader Springtime, go listen to the 5 other years, the 20 other episodes.
Yeah, we all know you tuned out 3/4 of the way through anyway. You all press stop half an hour in because you had to go to the shops, or, you know, the whatever you were doing, you had to start doing it again. Right. None of you have listened to every single minute of Sleazy Spader Springtime. So it's out there. We go on for hours and hours, and all the good stuff's at the end. All the good stuff's at the end.
We do that on purpose.
I will guarantee that every single Sleazy Spader Springtime fan listening to this right now has on at least one episode turned off after 10 minutes because we hadn't even gotten to the movie yet. You were pissed off about it.
Probably. But I would say the only person out there who probably has listened to every single minute of all the Sleazy Spader Springtime episodes is the Lun, Andy Lunn. The legend that is the Lun. But I would love to say to Adolf Oliver Nipple, thank you ever so much for writing. Please comment whenever you like, and we will read out your comments. Same to all the listeners out there. Please don't forget to write. And because we are doing new episodes, why not be like Dr. Fuzz, the wonderful Dr. Fuzz, and support on Patreon. That's patreon.com/aftermoviediner. Dr. Fuzz has 2 years of episodes that he's catching up on, but all the while supporting the new episodes to the tune of $1.50 an episode, which is fantastic. You do not have to donate a lot because it's all good. It builds up over time, and all support is needed. The big payouts that I do are once a year to the host site and once a year to my website. So supporting even $1 a show over time is perfect, because by the time we do another 50 shows or whatever, that's $50 I can shove towards the website renewal. So it all works out, and it's all fantastic. So head on over to patreon.com/aftermoviediner and be like Dr. Fuzz. Support us there. I just want to make sure that we didn't shortchange it. I'm glad he liked Willy Wonderland. He liked that episode. He agreed with us in that. Can we imagine Willis in the movie? No, because I don't think Willis has got the energy or the impetus or even the desire to like do something as creative as what Cage did with the role.
Agreed. You have to be quite committed to spend a whole movie not talking.
And Spader in the Office, I'm going to watch it anyway. I'm going to find it and watch it. I suppose it's on Peacock. So
it is.
I will find it
and
watch it. It's on Peacock. Bringing up Peacock, a bit of news this week, which, is hardly a surprise, but Amazon has bought MGM. So, it depends. A lot of people are like, whoa, what does this mean? Well, it goes...
Jeff Bezos is James Bond, presumably.
Right. It goes one of two ways, right? It either goes that Bezos opens up the MGM vault and all the MGM movies suddenly pile onto Amazon Prime, which would be awesome. Or he creates like an Amazon Prime add-on, like MGM Plus or something that you have to pay extra for. Or they do what Disney did with Fox Searchlight or Fox 20th Century Fox, and they lock away all the MGM films until, I don't know, Bezos can digitally put his face in there. Or
no, they did it for two reasons. To dump the content on Amazon Prime because they want to be able to have lots of hours of stuff on there, and they want to own the IP and develop their own shit from it.
Yeah, exactly. But I just mean the route they go. It'd be.
I don't think they'd create they don't care about money. They've got more money than they possibly need. They only care about getting people to buy stuff on Amazon. That's what they care about. So if buying MGM gets them to either make shows or put shows on Prime, that means people will come to Amazon and buy things, then they're all for it.
Yeah. And look, it was funny to see people outraged about Amazon buying MGM when Disney has literally bought how many IPs at this point?
Yeah, they have all
and
of it.
how
They've
many
got all the IP, mate. There isn't any IP left.
Too much bloody IP.
Too much bloody IP.
All right, so that was from Adolf Oliver Nipple. The other comment from A. Nelsex, which could also be the aforementioned Monsignor Nipple. He asked, can you review the Saw movies and also the new one, Spiral, as well? I hate to say it, but no, we can't. We can't do any of those things. I'm not a fan of the Saw franchise, and I also feel like we are the one podcast that people go, hey, can you do that? And we just kind of go, no.
Well, I think it's because we go where the wind blows us, and we tend to be blown towards like fun but peculiar movies made by people who were really trying to do something. Well, that's what we're drawn to. We're not drawn to cynical cash grab franchises, lazy bums doing crap for the sake of an easy laugh. And we're not drawn to like serious strokey beard movies where we can go, well, I think this is all about the possibility of balance in human existence or whatever, right?
Right.
We're drawn to things that, interest us and make us laugh and whatever. But yeah, bollocks to Saw. I quite like the first one, but the rest of it, I'm just not interested in those movies.
First of all, I'm not particularly interested. It's one of those franchises that had I started it and got caught up and kept going every film that it came out, I probably would. But I didn't. I watched the first one and then I blinked and there were 10 of them. And I'm like, I just, what I mean?
Actually, that's pretty much how I feel too. Yeah.
And then I was like, well, I don't know that, you know what I mean? I've seen all the clips, and from a special effects standpoint, people's backs being ripped off or whatever is relatively interesting for about 5 seconds. But, again, by about the third, let's say we did this, right? Let's go, we'll do the Saw franchise. By about the third film, what more would there be to say? Like, would you really want us to sit through like...
Well, I think he'd want us to watch all of them and do a single podcast on all the Saw movies. Maybe you could take 1 to 4 and I could take 5 to whatever number we're on.
Yeah, no, we're not doing that. But thank you for asking. You can get in line behind the Australian dude who keeps asking us to do that John Cryer film we haven't done yet. Who emails me?
That's also not going to happen.
Who emails me every 9 months about it? I'm not even kidding. Like every 9 months, I get another email about that, and with like a guy. I think last time he scanned his VHS cover of it or something. But yeah, he lives in hope. And listen, I am willing to stoke the fire. Who
are we to deny hope?
To deny hope. I will stoke the fire of hope. I just will also say that probably won't happen.
Yeah.
So, but thank you very much for writing in. And we do not want to deter anyone from writing in Adolf Nipple. So thank you. But before we get to the film, we have Shednannigans, the wonderful story by Robin Doyle, of his Shed-based exploits, which you are going to just adore. Listen,
cool, I'm looking forward to it, man.
And Jim alike. Here we go. Dear John and Jim, the last year has been one of musing and gazing at the hills from the safety of my shed with the two of you alongside. At the start of the pandemic, I quickly realized that decisive action was needed and so set about learning to brew beer in the shed. With that secured and a steady supply of eggs, I was pretty well set to face the apocalypse because he has a chicken. He has a chicken.
Oh, yeah, of course. Right. He's got a chicken.
He didn't just go buy a steady supply of eggs.
No.
He has a chicken. So it's like I was pretty well set to face the apocalypse. I have no idea how our non-shed-based comrades were able to cope. I can only assume some cardboard box-based solution. You may well ask what shed-based shenanigans a shed-based drunken Scotsman who is basically under house arrest, I must assure you that I was not under house arrest prior to the lockdown, can get up to. Well, the following has a shed and after-movie diner element and may well elucidate? I don't know how to pronounce it. Elucidate. Make lucid. Okay. Is that what that means?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not very good at English. Okay. Mooching around the shed like a latter-day tea-infused Bukowski, I decided to do a spot of gardening in my flip-flops. Surprisingly, within minutes, I had tripped over and dislocated my shoulder. I signaled the event to my long-suffering wife by having a bit of a swear and rolling about on the ground for a spell. Mrs. D immediately rushed into action and appeared with a cup of tea and asking why I was wearing flip-flops. I wish I were kidding. Possibly the most British reaction to any crisis. Shortly thereafter, I settled into the waiting room at the Royal Infirmary, where an ant trail of overweight middle-aged men, my people, trickled in. All of whom had got themselves on the wrong end of a power tool. Basically, a new arrival would walk or hobble in, tut, look skyward, and mention the offending article, e.g., tut, nail gun, before settling into a companionable silence. To be honest, Mr. Nail Gun didn't need to tell us as the nail was still in his hand. When I arrived, I said flip-flops, and disturbingly, everybody nodded sagely. After a soothing 2 hours, I was x-rayed and asked if I would like some morphine. Well, it would have been churlish to refuse. A quick note to the NHS. When you're about to pop a shoulder back in, don't ask the other nurse to distract him. It lessens the surprise. And even when you don't see many of these dislocations as they usually occur in cases of electric shocks, don't add, and now we can add flip-flops to the list. Although a year where I contributed to both medical and shed science is surely a year of achievements. Arriving home, having endured a lengthy "can I not turn my back on you for 5 minutes" monologue, I retreated to the shed. I retreated to the shed for a bit of contemplation, only to discover that the Christine episode had been posted. Hurrah! The three of us settled down to a morphine-infused listen. Magnificent. Best episode ever. Should you be interested in my pandemic adventures, I'm happy to oblige. I fought and was outwitted by a heron. I once, many years ago, scared the life out of Sir Derek Jacobi. Yours in haste to catch the post, Robin. P.S. Considering learning to grow opium poppies.
Well, yeah. I mean, if it improves the quality of the diner, why not?
Yeah. So all I can ask, Robin, is if you could send us one of those emails a week, sir, that would be an absolute delight. We will make it a regular section. Robin Doyle's Shednannigans, a regular section on the After Movie Diner. The idea of him dislocating his shoulder in a way that is usually reserved for electrocutions because he was wearing flip-flops.
I have to say my favorite bit is the "Can I not turn my back on you for 5 minutes" monologue. That was great.
Well, the fact that his wife ran over to him with a cup of tea.
Wasn't he? He's clearly there in agony and asking, "Why are you wearing flip-flops?" It's like, is that the most important question that needs to be asked right now?
It is. Only people of British descent will understand the humor in all of that. And
I think that's splendid. I heartily agree. I think we need some kind of like postcards from the Shedge or whatever.
Postcards from the Shedge. I like that.
Yeah, that's what we need for Robin.
And then Robin, if you send us 50, I'll compile them in a book and make them available, and then give you the money or something. I don't know. Whatever.
That's how publishing works, I understand.
Well, no, I'll self-publish it. I'll take what it costs to self-publish it, and then I'll give him all the profits.
Makes sense to me.
Anyway, we love it, Robin. Thank you so much.
That was great. That was really, really funny.
That was fantastic. That was fantastic.
What you're about to hear is very, very irritating. Basically, in order to keep our podcast up on Spreaker, we have to allow them to stick bleeding adverts all over the place. So please, please, please know that these adverts will be over very shortly. Go make yourself a cup of tea or have a poop or something. And then the moment you're done with that, the adverts will be done and we'll be back talking about Wrath of Man, starring Jason Statham. But until then, here are some cock-mothering adverts that are in no way endorsed by the After Movie Diner or its hosts, as we loathe all forms of adverts and can only apologize wholeheartedly to our listening several for having to have them in there. But such is modern podcasting and the corporate behemoths that own it. So anyway, here are some ads. Fuck them. Wait a minute or two, and then we'll be back. I do try and keep ads to a minimum, but thank you for being very patient. I've never had any complaints, so thank you for understanding.
All right, so we've had comments, we've had emails, we've had Shednannigans. We can put it off no longer.
We can't.
Let the Jason Statham impressions commence. And the Mockney accents fly, because it is Guy Ritchie's Wrath of a Man.
Was it Wrath of Man, isn't it? Wrath of Man?
Wrath of Man, that's right.
Because I said The Wrath of Man, and you were like, no, I think you'll find it's Wrath of Man.
Right.
And then you got confused, and you threw a the in there in a totally weird place.
No,
Wrath of the Man.
I said Wrath of a Man, is what I said.
Oh, Wrath of a Man.
But it's Wrath of Man, like Wrath of Khan, but Wrath of Man.
I think it's Wrath of God versus Wrath of Man. I think that's what they're going for. I don't think they had the second installment in the popular Star Trek franchise in mind when titling the movie.
I think Guy Ritchie is probably more of a Star Trek fan than whoever wrote Wrath of God thing.
Probably.
Who wrote Wrath of God?
I don't know. No. I mean, that's an expression, isn't it? The Wrath of God.
Well, all right. I mean, it's an expression, but I mean, wrath of man, wrath of Khan, that's more...
Yeah, I agree. If you're you, when you hear wrath of something, you go, Khan.
Khan.
Most people think...
If I was doing one of those word association psychological tests, and someone was like,
well,
wrath,
God help us all, I think. Right?
Wrath, I would say Khan. And they're not going to be like, no, it's God, actually. You go, well, it's Khan, actually, because it's my brain.
Yeah, but it's just, okay, it's fine. It's fine, whatever. I'm just saying wrath of God is the more outside of Star Trek fans.
All right. Yeah. So the movie has nothing to do with Star Trek, which is probably why Jim is insisting on this. It stars Jason Statham. As a man who almost says about as much as Nick Cage said in Willy Wonderland. I think Jason Statham has about 5 lines in the whole film. And they're about 3 or 4 words each. He is a chappie. Do you want to do the rundown or shall I?
Up to you, mate. If you want to give it a crack, you already started.
No, you go ahead. I always like it because then I can pick holes in when you get it wrong.
You always go, no, wait. You forgot the bit where he ties up his shoelaces before he does that thing. You know, well, why is the shoelaces? No, they took the time in the movie to have the shoelaces bit, right? This is not. I am all about paint the picture. Paint the picture.
Paint the picture.
Paint the picture of Wrath of Man.
Broad strokes, mate. Broad strokes.
Broad strokes. I try not to give too much away, I guess. All right. So in order that not to give anything away, the basic plot of the movie is clearly mysterious bloke who knows more than he's letting on becomes a security guard in it's like a security van. What are they like?
Well, it's like Securicor or whatever.
Yeah,
they drive money from banks and businesses
right.
back to a warehouse to be. Yeah.
So he joins. He's like a new recruit. Apparently, he's worked in this like field before, but he does quite suspicious things like he shoots a gun, but not that accurately. And then the really suspicious thing is he gets almost exactly 70% on his like test, which is just enough that he needs to like pass and become a guard. So that was a bit like, and he's obviously like knows how to handle himself. So that's sort of the setup. And then why he's there, what he's seeking to achieve, and how the movie kind of pans out is in a kind of a it's sort of revenge thriller, sort of crime thriller, sort of heist thriller. There's a lot going on, but it's definitely a thriller starring Statham. And I think if we said any more, that would give away some pretty significant plot points, I think, that would be best enjoyed on your own.
Well, I mean, I think the trailer gives away more than what you just said. So,
I haven't seen the trailer.
Yeah, so people can watch the trailer. But yeah, mysterious guy, works for Thing, crime heist. That's basically what you're looking at. What you're looking at, by the way, is a world in which every single armored truck carrying even the smallest amount of cash is going to get bumped off or knocked over at some point. Everyone is knocking over everything. That's just what's happening because we live in a world of crime. But there is a key revenge element to it. I will hint that to it. But the one thing I want to warn people, because some people may not have seen this, some people may wait till it goes on streaming. Some people may be considering this to be their return to cinemas. I don't know if we have Statham fans out there or Guy Ritchie fans out there. Think of this more as a Guy Ritchie film than a Statham film. And the reason why I say this is less... If you're going in expecting Statham to do like martial arts or like blow shit up or, repeat sort of Safe or The Mechanic or Fast and Furious, then this is not the film. You've got to think of this as it's kind of like Guy Ritchie's Heat with a sort of 70-star revenge plot in the middle of it. That's kind of a way I would think about it. But not necessarily as good as either of those things assume. It's not a bad film by any means. I think it's an oddly paced film, and at times an oddly toned film. And it certainly wasn't what I was expecting. It certainly wasn't what I was expecting at all. So I do feel like I need to give it a second watch now, based on the fact that it's more of a brooding crime thriller with sort of almost like an unnecessary ensemble cast. Like, it's almost unnecessary how many characters we're introduced to, considering how few we actually care about. But yeah, it's not the wham bam action film you would expect from Statham. That's the one caveat I would say. So anyway, Jim, you always have an interesting take on films like this that I don't seem to be able to muster, and I often prefer to hear your opinion first so that it helps my opinion. So I'm very intrigued. What was your reaction to Rotherman?
Well, I guess because I had very low expectations, right? Because up to now, there's two types of Guy Ritchie movies, right? There's a Guy Ritchie movie where someone goes, listen, we're making a film about something stupid. And
King Arthur, for example.
King Arthur, Man from U.N.C.L.E., Sherlock Holmes, whatever. And it's we've got a load of money and some charismatic stars. We just need somebody to put the money and the stars and the conceit together and come out with something fun, right? And he does that really well, often by doing things that he thinks are cool. So like lots of cockney talk. Anyway, the point is that they're usually quite fun because he does manage to put all those things together and come out with something with a little bit of, I don't know, character, a little bit of color.
I tell you, what you're saying is that he is, and this is how he is good at a romp, and he is good when he is not the driving force behind the script. He can be the driving force behind the film, but when he's not the driving force behind the script. So
so I'd agree with that. So the thing, and then the Gentleman, which I was really looking forward to, and it was so piss poor and boring and not funny or interesting or cool or anything. It was just badly. I
have to go back and listen to that episode, but I swear I enjoyed it. I don't know.
No, I don't think either of us enjoyed it. I don't think either of us did. Or maybe I enjoyed it less than you. But I definitely did not enjoy it. And it's full of all the things I don't like about Guy Ritchie movies, which is stunt casting, where it's just like, oh, I've managed to get somebody, interesting or cool to play a role, even though it's got nothing really, because that role doesn't really have a character. I just accept that there's some stunt casting involved. There's lots of wheels within wheels of a plot that doesn't really make any sense if you think about it. And the idea that the bloke in the middle of all of it has been on top of their business the whole time, all that kind of, I can't, anyway, it's fucking boring. So given that I knew that this was probably more likely to be the Gentleman than like King Arthur, I was not particularly, had high hopes of the movie. So the thing is, I guess, is that I clearly a lot more than you, I really enjoyed it, like a lot. I thought it was really good. I thought it didn't have any of the things that Guy Ritchie normally leans on, right? So there's no stunt casting. Everybody that's I sort of know what you mean about the ensemble bit, but what I like about it is that everybody was cast properly. Like everybody that needed to be who they were who they were. So like the Clint Eastwood's kid is in it, right? And it's not stunt casting, because you need a guy who, if you look at him, sort of squint, looks a bit like his dad. So he's kind of cool, kind of moody, kind of charismatic. But if you look a little bit closer, you realize he's got no charisma. It's kind of a bit odious. And actually, you don't like him very much at all, which is perfect for that character, right?
Right.
Then you've got the guy that drives him around, his mate, the guy from...
Holt McCallany or whatever.
right here.
Holt McCallany?
Yeah, something like that. I don't know how to pronounce it. But the bloke from the serial killer show. Mindhunter. And he's perfect too, because he's avuncular, very charismatic, very got a lot of, screen magnetism, but at the same time, despite being very likable, might have a bit of a dark edge to him if you look at, any closer. So everybody, even Josh Hartnett, turns up as being like kind of a good guy, but also kind of a dick, which again is like, so that's Josh Hartnett, right? It's all, everybody's cast properly for their roles. Even Statham is like, don't do anything except growl and look tough. Like people would not want to fuck with you. And that he does that beautifully. And then I really liked the feel of it, and the music and the tone of it was very kind of, there was it was urgent. It was everything about it was careful in how it was put together and how it unrolled, and it didn't go for anything easy. It didn't go for we better have a gunfight here, or I better have some cheeky side conversation about whatever. It was all just nice. And I really liked the way it popped back and forth in time, but not in a Reservoir Dogs way, in this is the best way to tell this story. I just really enjoyed it. And all the way through, I was thinking, if Guy Ritchie can make movies like this, then he doesn't ever need to make Shash Like the Gentleman ever again. He doesn't need any of that crap to lean on. These are the films, clearly, when he started making movies, he wanted to make The Long Good Friday. That's what he wanted to make. You know what I mean?
Right.
He doesn't like films about cheeky Cockney gangsters talking bruh. He likes The Long Good Friday and Get Carter. These are the films and this is like that. It's what if I didn't rely on stunt casting and cheeky dialogue and just tried to make a film that I would have really loved when I was a teenager? And he did, and I think it totally works. And I know what you mean about the pace, and I think we can get onto it later. But I think while I was watching it, I did realize what was missing from the movie that would have made it work completely, because it doesn't quite land the ending. But it got to a point about 3/4 of the way through where I was completely in love with the movie, properly. It like I said, the ending doesn't quite land it, but about 3/4 of the way through, I was just thinking, this is fucking brilliant. I'm really loving this. So yeah, that's how I felt about it.
So off the back of that, a couple of things. The script has one strong point, which is that this is based on a French film, and the structure, the basic structure and the basic idea and I don't know because I haven't seen the French film, but probably. No,
you're right, but it is very, I know what you mean. It does come across like that for sure.
What I'm saying is Guy Ritchie didn't need to sit down and come up with this plot. Right. It was there, and all he needed to do was fill in the blanks, right? So the film does benefit from a decent structure. I still think it could do with about 15 minutes cut out of it. I also think that it's problematic that it feels like Statham was only on set for about 7 days. It feels like they filmed all of his bits and then Guy Ritchie padded out the rest of the movie to try and make it feel like he was throughout the whole film. He's not in it enough, and he's not given enough of a chance to do what he's really good at. But we'll get onto that. But then the upside of the script, good structure, right? Much like the upside of Guy Ritchie is there are about 3 or 4 pieces in here in the film that have a really strong idea behind them. Just a really good, strong conceptual idea of this is how I'm going to film this scene. And not only that, but because of the time jumps and because of the perception shifts, because you see sometimes one set piece from 3 different characters' point of views and stuff. It gives him the chance to stage an entire set piece from, like I say, sometimes 3 or 4 different points of view, but play each one of those points of view out like they are their own, self-contained, interestingly shot, interestingly scored action beats or drama beats. And that I really, really appreciated. The main incident that kind of kicks off all the other action in the film, the kind of the main thing, the main incident, that is shot from multiple different angles and is done really, really well. Like, you don't mind seeing it repeated because of the way that he's clearly sat down with a script supervisor and even a storyboard artist and a production assistant or whatever, and gone, okay, this is how I want to do it. Like, he has a clear idea, just like the structure of the film has a clear idea of where it's going and what it's doing. He has some clear ideas on some of the things, and some of the film works really, really well. The problem is that there is about 40% of the film, 35% of the film that I think doesn't work at all, and I think does fall flat. The ending mainly being one of them. And I get that he's going more for like the touch points of 70s, early 80s British dramas that don't always end the way you think they're going to end, or don't always necessarily end on a positive note, or don't always necessarily end with the big shootout or the big explosion or big whatever. I get that he's going for that, and I definitely appreciate it more based on that idea. But the pacing was such, and the characters were such, that I just felt some of the scenes in the movie lagged for me. And they lagged for me because I started to think, like, why is any of, like, certainly the more we got to know the antagonists, I'll just call them that, the group of attackers, the group of thieves, the more the film lingered on them and tried to, like, weirdly flesh them out, the less I felt like it drew the focus away from what was meant to be the main story. And it's not that, because in another movie you might argue, well, they didn't flesh these characters out enough. They didn't give these characters room to breathe, or whatever it was. This movie almost gives all of its characters too much room to breathe. Like, you either do a stripped down like revenge thriller, the kind of which Charles Bronson or Michael Caine or Terence Stamp would make in the 70s, the early 80s, or you make, the big unwieldy crime drama of like a Heat, which I would also accuse of being bloated and have too many characters and da-da-da. I have problems with Heat as well. But trying to marry the two, it's not that he doesn't pull it off, but because he does. In some cases, he pulls off the sort of monosyllabic, hard nut, revenge, a single guy against the world storyline. He does marry that as successfully as I could possibly imagine it being married to the unnecessarily complicated crime, thing. But there was some cases for me where some scenes and some things where I just felt it went on too long, or I felt like it was giving me extraneous information that didn't pay off. And it didn't gel as well with just a straight up revenge story. And I will wholeheartedly put that down to me going in expecting more of a Statham vehicle and was not expecting what I actually got. I'll put it down.
Fair enough. I think what's interesting is that you and I went to the and this can happen a lot, right? But sat with different. I sat down expecting a not very good Guy Ritchie film, and so I was more than pleasantly surprised by what I got. You were sitting down expecting like a wham bam Statham movie, which by and large are at the very least, exciting, and were disappointed. because I don't actually disagree with anything that you're saying, but
I wasn't disappointed because I realized after about 15 minutes, we're in late 70s, early 80s crime thrillers that, you know, Hackman and Robert Duvall would show up in. We're in that territory. We're not in Wham Bam Statham territory. But even knowing that, or even understanding that, and even going with it, and even loving a lot about it. Please don't get me wrong. Like, I did love a lot about it.
No, I know what you mean. I guess what I'm saying is, John, this is just my perspective, because I'm not disagreeing with anything that you said, because I think you're right about all of that. But I think I liked what he was reaching for, even if he didn't quite get there. That's what I mean. Like, I think
I agree with that statement 100%. I like what he was reaching for,
because I think even in the case of fleshing, in defense of those bits that you've highlighted as not working, which I agree they don't work, but I think the idea is that the reason that the bank robbers are fleshed out, right, is that normally a shortcut in a revenge film, and it happens in, you know, like Taken is a good example, where you have to establish that the people that he's going to like wipe out or, you know, get revenge on are, you know, evil. Like they've got it coming, right? That's the logic. And so, because basically I think there's two scenes missing from the movie that I think would make it work. And so let me just start there with with the two scenes that I think are missing. The first scene I think that's missing, and they're connected, is which like they kind of hint at, but it's just not driven home. Is this idea that, because it's slightly, I think, a byproduct of flipping the timelines around, in that by the time you find out that Statham is there because he knows there's an inside man, that's probably what's missing. It's never firmly established there is an inside man, and Statham is there looking for the inside man. Like, it's definitely, that's what's going on. And there's bits where he's like looking at cards and stuff, and it doesn't quite land, because I think if you felt that all these characters like Hart, the guy he rides with, the woman, the guy with the beard, it's like, I think you're supposed to be like, who's the inside man? And it's like a little bit of investigative stuff, but there's not, I guess, enough investigating. There's like a few bits, but it just doesn't quite. And I think it's like a little scene.
The reveal of the inside man is the thing that falls flat, coupled with the very end where you set up a gunfight, and actually it's not that, it doesn't end up being that at all. So that is disappointing. And I agree with you. I think if there was some element of, if there was some element of the, the thing, like the tension of the thing, which is, who's the bad un, right?
Yeah, which is as I say, so what a little scene where it's established that after it's like clear that Statham's like, cut a sway through the criminal underworld of Los Angeles, killing or torturing nearly everybody to find out that no one knows who these people are. To land at it's never been like, by doing it that way, by having him arrive at the place first and do a lot of things first before you find out that's what he's doing, means that him like looking at people and checking things out, it's like, it's not clear. It feels like an act of desperation rather than a calculated risk, and to be fair, it is an act of desperation, but the pace of the movie, I think, which you're right to highlight, suffers because these people are not like, they're supposed to be there because you're like, well, who's the bad and who's the bad? And then the other scene that's missing is further on in the movie, after they've established who the gang are. And I think, and which I think, if it's there, helps the ending massively, which is the idea that he is patient. And they don't have a scene where it's like, I'm going to be here until like the inside man gets greedy again. It's going to happen. I don't care that I've been here for 6 months. I don't care if I'm here for another 6 months. I don't care what's happening to my business. The inside man is here. They didn't steal enough money. Like, there were this many people in the crew. This is how much they stole. That's not enough. I know that's not enough. They're too good, and they didn't steal enough money to retire. If they have an inside man here, then they're gonna hit it again. So I'm staying. And if they'd established him as like patiently waiting for his revenge, right, then I think that ending makes a lot more sense. You know what I mean? Like the feeling of time passing and him sacrificing his successful criminal enterprise, that he would seemingly wait for 6 months or a year or however long it's taken on a hunch to be finally confronted with the thing that he's been waiting for, with a kind of a neat trick that I'd actually forgotten that he did when it happened. It wasn't as signposted as it might have been. And the whole thing with the report and whatnot would have worked a lot better. So I think with those two scenes,
thing with the report
comes together. I don't want to give it away, but like the very, very end.
You can give it away. At this point, are we going to suggest people go see it?
Yeah, if you, as long as you're prepared to, yes, it's slightly flawed, but it's a really cool, moody, like you say, like late 70s, early 80s crime revenge thriller that I think is done with love and care and attention and passion. And I found myself really swept up in it. And even if it wasn't the greatest film in the history of, great films, it's definitely, I think, the best Guy Ritchie film I've seen, if not the most fun.
Okay, so now we can spoil it. What report and stuff? What are you talking?
Oh, just the thing at the end, because they have those quite neat titles of the dark spirit and all that, and then it was like brain, liver, lung, spleen.
Yes.
And asking him to read his son's autopsy report.
You mean the autopsy report, right?
Yeah, the autopsy report. Yeah. So I think that works with that. So that's basically it. Is I think with those two scenes, the establishing that he's looking to somebody, and then establishing that he hasn't found them, but that he is patient that they will make a move. And maybe those two things are connected. Maybe if they just had one scene where he's like, well, I haven't found them. I've turned over every rock. I've looked at everyone's backgrounds. Whoever they are, they're sitting deep. So I'm just going to wait because there's no way that they're not going to strike again. So that's what's that? 30 seconds, a minute? Like him with his, the woman in the hotel room, maybe another scene with her, or him with his beardy assistant guy from the past. You know what I mean? Like a phone call, anything would have done it. A phone call with the beardy guy from a payphone or whatever, where he says, I haven't found them. They're sitting deep, but they didn't steal it. There's 6 of them. They didn't steal enough money. So they're definitely going to strike again. And I'll be here when they do. And that's it. That's the scene. And with that, I think you solve a shitload of problems. So it's a 1-minute phone call scene and you solve a shitload of problems with the movie, in my opinion. But other than that, I loved it.
So here's a couple of things.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I get where you're coming from. So I think the thing that I hadn't seen that might be potentially interesting about the film, and the film might squander a little bit, is that the idea is essentially, Statham is second in command to, but basically the top dog of all the crims, second in command of a big sprawling criminal empire.
How's he second in command?
Well, because Andy Garcia is first in command.
No, Andy Garcia is not first in command. Andy Garcia is a cop.
No, he's not.
Yeah, he is.
No, he's not. Andy Garcia is the top of the crime syndicate or whatever that Statham works for.
I don't think so, because they keep calling him boss. All the other guys.
He is the boss of all of those guys. He's the boss of all of those guys, but Andy Garcia is letting him do it. If Andy Garcia wanted to say,
no, Andy Garcia is like a fed. No, Andy Garcia is like a fed because Statham says to Andy Garcia something like, I'll get done in 2 weeks what you couldn't get done in 6 months. And the idea is finding out who's been doing these robberies. That's what, because his two agent guys in the car say you're letting the fox.
Well, it's all. I don't know, but it's all, and they might be in on it. They may be on the take as well. But like
I think the cop thing is pretty simple. I think the cop thing is they don't know who's doing the robberies. This guy says, look, they killed my kid. I'm going to find him and bring him down. And if I take out most of the criminal underclass in LA while doing it, how's that skin off your nose? And that's what that is, I think. I don't think Garcia is anybody's boss. I think he's like the copper who's letting Statham do his thing.
Well, again, that was not established. And I don't know what copper sits around in, expensive cars and loose suits waiting for.
Well, no, because he says like there's only so long I can. He says there's only so long I can look surprised or confused. I forget what he says, but like that's an old thing of like
it doesn't mean he's not controlling stuff. Anyway, let's not go down that fucking rabbit hole. But It does, again, it's another problem with the movie is that people are not, despite all the screen time they get, they're not clearly established. But anyway, Statham is, king of the crims, right? And he's a hard nut and he's brutal and he's, not a good person, right? And neither is any of his gang guys, right? The so-called antagonists, the bad guys of the movie, down on their heel, mercenaries for hire, ex-soldiers who have been, ignored by the system kind of thing, right? Who decide to take up a life of crime in order to, do that one last big score and then retire. Like they're not career criminals. They're basically the A-team, only they've decided to steal money instead of help Johnny.
I don't know that I agree with that.
Why would you not agree with
that? No. But just the idea that I don't think they're looking for one big score and then retire, although that's what the big thing of the movie is. But it seems like most of them just like being like working it as a squad again, and that element of danger and teamwork and taking. Right,
but Jeffrey Donovan. Jeffrey Donovan is the Sarge calling the shots on his team of who in any other movie would essentially be kind of like, the lovable gang of crims, soldiers turned crims, but with like one bad egg, right? And Statham is the man on revenge, right? Who you forgive because he's gone through this. You forgive his actions because he's gone through this terrible scenario. Except in this movie, instead of him being in the case of Neeson, instead of him being like an ex-SAS guy, or instead of him being, even like Charles, but even like being a hitman for hire or whatever, which you can kind of, I guess, morally get your head around or whatever. He's a flat out criminal overlord. What I'm trying to say is, right, you've got criminals, the head of whom ends up being the quote unquote person that you are rooting for because he's revenging the death of his son, right? And then on the other hand, you've got soldiers, right, who have decided to come together to knock over a few security cars who have one rogue element in them, right? So it's set up to be essentially the guys who you would normally be good guys up against the guys who would normally be bad guys, with those roles slightly flipped. And I think what I was getting to is what overeggs the pudding of all that, like, are they good guys? Are they bad guys? Does it matter? Is everyone just like, is it just a bunch of guys? Is the Scott Eastwood character. Because if Scott Eastwood, right, was a guy who panicked and shot everybody, that would be one thing, right? Then it would make it a more interesting 70s style, ambiguous thing where Statham is essentially going after a bunch of reasonably nice soldiers who just in a bad pinch decided to made a bad decision, right? And now they're paying for their bad decision. That would be more interesting than Scott Eastwood being an out and out bad un who doesn't listen to his Sarge, buys the expensive motorbike, spends the money, shoots the kid without any remorse, shoots all his teammates without any remorse, is just a bad guy, right? That would work if the movie was a Statham gets the bad guys at any cost and tears them up, and there's fights on rooftops and car chases and blah 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 blah. But if you're going with the everyone is ambiguous and no one necessarily has any moral compass outside of their own moral compass, and whatever means something interesting to them, which I think the movie was trying to do by showing like Donovan's wife and kid and backstory, and him trying to say to people like, we've got to do this by the plan, and let's not try and, cause too many casualties and da-da-da-da-da. Like, Donovan's trying to be like, yes, we're doing this. And yes, I've got some men who are, have itchy trigger fingers, who are looking to just get back into the thick of things, and they've been abandoned by the system, etc. But there's a way to do this smartly and decently and da-da-da-da-da. And Scott Eastwood is the one fucking it up for everybody. If you either went ambiguous or in a 70s way, or if you went, hardcore, Statham's going to take everyone down, and these.
No, okay, all right. Can I say one thing? I would
have more of a. What?
I think that's right. I think they want to have their cake and eat it, right? Like you're right. They want to have the ambiguity, but they also want Statham to like be justified in kicking ass. And it almost feels like either like they slightly chickened out, or they felt like they needed a bigger, like that's the only way that it works in the end. Or like I can see like Statham reading the script going, I'm not going to be a psychopath who kills somebody who doesn't deserve it. I'm not going to play that role. I'm not saying he did, but I think that's a really, really good point. And it does muddy the gunfight, because it feels like, you're right, if it had been ambiguous, then the stakes would be, well, I don't know how this is going to end, because I was with Statham, but now I've seen what Statham does. I don't know that I am. And there are some touches through there, like there's some young girls and I've killed their abductors and left them money, so actually I'm a good guy. But at the same time, he's also like kidnapping people in their bed and like threatening their wives. It's like, which again, it's not that it doesn't make sense, but it does. It is like, well, either, like you're saying, he's a hard-bitten head of a criminal empire who, through his own fault, got his son killed, kind of. In which case, that ambiguity in the gunfight at the end would work really well, because you'd be thinking, well, I don't know that I want Statham to take them out. But yeah, and then I don't know. And then having him like team up with the guards, none of whom are like thieves or cowards or, on the take or whatever. And then even having the guy, who's the inside man, who's like a proper shithead, and he doesn't really get his comeuppance either. Although I did quite like the, too slow thing. Like, again, this
is what I mean. What I also meant was to highlight the fact that at a certain point, the film becomes divided in its journey, in the sense that you start off following Statham, and then somehow, and this is what I mean about Statham like not really being around a lot, is it feels like the end of the second act, beginning of the third act, then entirely focuses on Donovan's crew and the background of Donovan's crew. And it's not that the movie doesn't need to do that. It does to some extent for us to kind of see the duality of it all or whatever, but it loses its neat and clean focus, and it messes with story beats that kind of, while I'm all for like bucking the cliche or, throwing the rule book out the window, there are certain reasons why these movies normally go a certain way, even if they're trying to lean more on the existential or on the drama or on the brooding violence of it all, and not focus on the martial arts whiz-bangery. Even if you are going to go 70s with it, there are certain beats that have to happen, and there's certain journeys you have to take with a character. And I feel like at a certain point, it's either not explaining Statham's character's journey enough, or it's dropping it all together to then be like, by the way, focus on these other guys. And the reason why I say that is, if the finale of the movie brought it back around again to finishing out Jason Statham's focus and Jason Statham's journey, that would be one thing, but it doesn't. The finale has the situation where, Statham almost gets his moment, then he doesn't. Then it goes off again for like another 15 minutes with the criminal gang and Scott Eastwood doing away with all the criminal gang. So you lose the, albeit sick, but the catharsis of Statham taking them out with, action moves and stunts and martial arts and guns and explosions. You lose the catharsis of that, and as a watcher, and instead you're suddenly then meant to flip your brain back to, oh no, here's more examples of how Scott Eastwood is a complete shit. And then the very end, Statham just shows up and kills him, and then we're on and then it ends. And it's the beats don't work. As an audience member, you kind of don't know where to look and you don't know who to go with, which takes me back to the second point I was going to make when I started this big long diatribe about the two different storylines, which is that the other major failing of the film is that none of the reveals work in a pleasing way. So there's the first reveal you see is, oh, Statham's been checking them out all along. Like you see him, there's a revisit of him like taking photos of the wall of the cards. There's a revisit of him in the pool hall stealing the guy's identity card. There's a revisit of the woman coming to his hotel room with the box of stuff being like blah, 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 blah. And this is all meant to be a penny drop moment where you go, oh, that's what he was doing all along. But because it didn't really do the setup very well, the penny drop moment, yes, it clears up the fact that you didn't understand what was happening the first time round, but it doesn't really hit home as a reveal.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. That's fair.
Right. The second reveal is the reveal of who the inside man is, which again, because the first reveal doesn't quite work, the second reveal of who the inside man is, he's just driving along in the truck and he just tells him. Like, he's just like, by the way, I'm the inside man. You're like, oh, okay. Like that kind of, I don't know, it pulls the rug out from under the whole, any tension you're trying to build. And then the last reveal, which you would think would be kind of, I don't know, either Statham cleaning house or, some other twist like the army guys getting away or whatever. I don't know. Maybe Statham just takes out Scott Eastwood, but the army guys still get away or whatever. Like some twist. There is no twist. Like you don't get the release of Statham kicking ass and taking names. You don't get that release. And therefore it isn't really satisfying. Like the reveal of him getting the autopsy report and killing him the way he killed his son. Like that almost doesn't feel enough. And listen, again, I completely blame that on the fact that my head is addled with having seen, 1,500 movies that end the other way, that end the way I want it to end with, the lead guy, whether it's Statham or Stallone.
No, but to be fair, you are right though, because if you're not going to make that movie, if you're going to consciously go, I'm not going to make a movie where Statham is a good guy and cuts his way through a bunch of bad guys, and you get all those cathartic moments. If you're not going to make that movie, then the ambiguity is in, that the whole firefight, the whole idea of like a bunch of people, right, with a bunch of different motives and reasons for fighting in a gunfight. So Statham, the other security guards, the bank robbers, whatever. And there being an ambiguity of, I don't know how this is going to end. I don't know. The soldiers are very well trained. So the idea that, Statham's going to take them all out because they don't know, it's not like when Statham takes out the first group of bank robbers where it's clearly I'm better at this than you are, right? So I can take you out without even fucking thinking about it. The military guy's like, well, that's just like 5 Stathams. Like they're all like hard, grizzled, know their firearms, well drilled. Like there's nothing that Statham has that they don't, other than perhaps like, I don't know, a will to do something potentially disgusting. But you suspect they've probably done a fair amount of like violently disgusting things in their life if they've been like fighting out in Afghanistan, right? So they don't have anything that he doesn't. So they're like effectively evenly matched. And then you're right. If you follow the journey with Statham, it's like, oh, well, I was kind of with Statham, but now it turns out maybe he's a psychopath. And the guys who he's after are maybe like more sympathetic, you know, more obviously the, like, you know, in the heist movie, like the you know, maybe the heroes even. So I don't know how I feel about all this because they did kill his kid. And, you know, there's something to admire about a bloke who sets his mind on something and accomplishes it, right? Like that's part of the catharsis of those things is watching somebody decide to do something for a very good reason and then do that thing, right? That's basically what that is. Whether it's a heist movie or a revenge movie, like that's the same thing. And so if you have a scenario where they're all locked in this place together, they can't get out, they're all heavily armed, and you don't know who's going to make it out if they're alive, that is an exciting climax, right? But it's the ambiguity that makes it exciting. You can't suddenly go, well, actually now there's a bad guy who's worse than Statham, and so Statham has to use his skills to get them. But you can't jump back to the revenge film when you've already written the ambiguous thing. You have to.
Also, may I just add, if Statham knew where Scott Eastwood lived all along, why?
No, he didn't know. No, he didn't know where he lived. He stuck the phone in the bag. Remember when he was like dressed up, he put the phone in the bag, and so that's why we knew where he was.
Sorry, guys. It is another bleeding ad break. I'm sorry. Please just be patient. We'll be back to the chat in just a minute. Thank you.
So the other thing I would say this, if you look at, you know, something like a Get Carter or whatever, or any of these things, even like previously, like Statham's Mechanic remake, or most people, once they've gone through the journey Statham has gone through, while there is some catharsis in the revenge, they also come out of it broken men. You don't get the feeling that at the end of Get Carter, after everything Carter's gone through, that he's just going to go back to like being a low-level hood for some gangsters down south or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, because he walks. I'm trying to think. Like, does he die at the end of Get Carter?
He does, yeah.
Right, he dies at the end of Get Carter, and at the end of Long Good Friday, like he gets kidnapped or whatever. But like the most out and out revenge films, I guess, apart from maybe Taken, end with the protagonist being, you know, having been accomplished something, but also being left with nothing, right? And I also have an issue with, on one hand, this is the movie where Statham has decided, or Guy Ritchie has decided, and Statham's agreed, I'm not going to be the guy that wins every fight. And I'm not going to be the guy that comes out of this without a scratch. And I'm not going to, you know, this is going to be more brutal than that. And there's going to be more consequences than that. But at the same time, by the time he walks away from Scott Eastwood's thing, meets Andy Garcia and gets in a car and drives away, he is the guy that's left without a scratch, despite what he's gone through previously. And you feel like he's going to go just right back to running his crew again, you know what I mean, without any...
No, I agree.
And so I just feel like there should be more weight to it.
No, it's true that it gets... It's true that the problem with the movie is the having your cake and eating it. He wants to make the whole purpose of the structure of the film and the way it's put together is to make you feel very ambiguous about whether you want the soldiers or Statham to win out in the big, gun battle at the end. Like I can only assume that in the French movie, that's what happens. That there's no Scott Eastwood in the French movie, right?
I don't know.
No, but I'm just saying, let's assume that the reason they did a remake of the film or the book or whatever is because it was good enough to warrant a remake, right? So let's assume they did everything right. Well, that is, there's no Eastwood, right? They're all well-trained soldiers, and you feel for them. And actually, it turns out that the guy you've been following is like a total psychopath, right? He's not like a guy that gives money to the girls he's rescued, right? He's just he's the guy that puts a bag over somebody's wife's head because he wants an answer that he knows deep down the guy probably doesn't have, And that whole bit with these guys, they deal with kids, they're a bad lot. We go, where's this come from? Right? It's like, why would anyway? So you have all that. And then in the big gun battle at the end, like putting all those people together, it'd be like, okay, so how do you feel about it now? Right? You thought you liked the protagonist who's out for revenge for his kid being killed, but actually he's a shithead. And the people he wants to take his revenge out on seem like, like they might be the heroes of another movie, like the heroes of their own movie, right? They're going to make the big score and get away. And the idea that, which I think is what the title is about, the idea that it's not fate or, chance or whatever that like fucks you up. It's you, right? You fuck you up. Or people and what they want, right? It's people and what they want that fuck things up. Not like, well, it was predestined. We're all going to get out of this. I can feel it and my whatever. And that works as a movie. But you can't, just as you're putting those two things together, have hedged your bets enough with Statham that he maybe is a good guy. And then you've put a bad guy in with the good guys so that Statham, who's actually maybe a good guy, can have his like revenge thriller moment. Because then it's like, well, what's everything else? And you're right, then you don't get the satisfaction of Statham beating people up. And Eastwood is in the wrong movie. Eastwood's like, I'm trying to think of, I could picture the guy who he is. He's the not as famous as the leading man who doesn't mind being hated by everybody in the cinema. Like that guy that's going to get his come up into the end.
Here are my two quick changes to the movie.
Okay.
That would work. I think it's very interesting because the other thing that just dawned on me that is very interesting about the movie is, like you say, Statham all cockily says, I'll do in 2 weeks what you wouldn't be able to achieve in 2 years or whatever. And he means I'll go around and put the screws to everybody and they'll just tell me who it is and I'll figure it out, right? Because he thinks he's got this underworld thing pegged, right? And the upshot of it is, the world is full of horrible fucking people and he's going to kill a bunch of them. But actually, that doesn't get him any closer. All his violence, all his anger, all his wrath has actually got him nowhere. What actually gets him somewhere is, like you were saying earlier, diligence and patience and a little bit of investigation, right? So if you had it, so he did all this violent shit, none of it worked out. And so instead he like goes undercover or whatever and does some investigation. If you had added, like you said earlier, just a couple of scenes that fleshed out the investigation so that there was like maybe even a ticking clock at some point, like maybe it's counting down to Black Friday. He's got to figure it out beforehand or whatever.
Yeah.
So that there's this investigation period, right? Flesh that out just a little bit. Rest of the movie, leave as is. Then at the very end, right? The very end, the only thing I would add, have everything play out as it did, gunfight and everything, even have it look like Statham is maybe out for the count as Scott Eastwood drives away. But the only thing I would change is this. Instead of the camera then following Scott Eastwood, and following him all the way home, and wandering around in his dressing gown, only for Statham to then show up. I would literally have Statham on his absolute last legs, get in the car, not like have a car chase, but get in a car so the camera is following him. With the phone, with the like following the phone on his phone or whatever, like so that you're connected to like how is he tracking these guys, right? Have Holt
just alive enough to speak to.
Have Holt McCallany and Scott Eastwood get all the way to, I don't know, the safe house or whatever, right? Statham gets the safe house. Eastwood double crosses McCallany, right? Kills him. Statham sees it through the door. And then Statham goes in and confronts Eastwood. And the only reason that I would do that is that then you could continue to follow Statham, even though the action would still be about Eastwood and McCallany and double crossing and blah, 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 blah. You would be essentially following Statham. You would round out the movie with the journey rather than Statham coming in at the end as what feels like an afterthought. You would at least be in the car with him. You could see how beat up he was. You could see everything that this whole journey took out of him, right? And you could see that with his last breath, like have him losing blood or something, but with his last breath, he watches through the door as McCallany gets shot, and then he comes in and kills Eastwood. And then the last scene of the movie is him just sitting on the steps of the bank of the safe house or whatever, like bleeding out, knowing that he's lost like everything in his life, but he's avenged his kid's death. And that's how I would wrap it up.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I'd only change one thing, which is I would change less. But I like the idea of following Statham. I'd have him follow Holt, Thingamajig, and Eastwood, and then I'd have everything in the movie play out exactly as it did. But you're right, I'd have it from Statham's point of view on his last legs, like limping down the tunnels or whatever, getting to Holt Thingamajig, who's not dead, right, but is very much on his like last fucking legs, like lying there gut shot or whatever, right? So Statham, you can have a moment there where Statham basically explains to like what's his face, like I had your fucking number the whole time or whatever, I don't know, whatever. But then he's the one that kills what's his face, McConaughey or Holt Thingamajig, as he will forever be known, and then have him, like you say, track the phone to the warehouse. That would be fine. I would be okay. I mean,
you needed to pick your protagonist, and at a certain point in the movie, your attentions are split between protagonists, and it makes the movie less neat and less. And you can go, well, does every movie need to be neat? And you go, no. But a movie like this needs to be satisfying. It just does. Like a movie like this,
if it's not neat, though, but if it's not neat in its story beats, it needs to be neat in its ideas. Like its ideas need to be clear.
There is a perfect metaphor for this whole movie within this movie. There is a sequence in this movie where Statham's crew is doing bad things to bad people, scored to a discordant remix of Folsom Prison Blues. And every time you think that discordant like remix of Folsom Prison Blues is actually going to like explode into music at the same time that like the screen explodes into violence or something like that, it doesn't. And like every time you think it's working with the scene, it doesn't quite work with the scene. It's like you go, I know what you're trying to do. Like, I get it. You found this like discordant remix of Folsom Prison Blues, and you think, wouldn't it be cool to have guys going through houses, harassing people and shooting people to the tune of this, like, you know, a classic song reimagined or whatever. But it never quite finds the groove or the height in that sequence that it needs to find. I feel that about the whole movie. It's got some really, really great ideas in it. The whole movie is a really great idea, but it never has that moment where your adrenaline is up enough that you care enough that it peaks. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Anyway, and actually, I did like that sequence, but also I know what you mean about it. I would say So I don't think I haven't changed my mind about it, because there was a point about 3/4 of the way through where I really, really was loving the movie.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
But
it's well
you're right. You're right about the ending, and a lot of the seeds of why it doesn't work in the ending are sown before that point. And I really do agree with everything that you said. I really do. I wouldn't downplay any of it. I think that's all absolutely right. I didn't care about a lot of it for 3/4 of an hour, because I was just enjoying it so much. But the ending did not blow me away like I felt like it should have done. Because the other thing about all those movies you talk about, right, whether it's Get Carter or Point Blank or whatever, right, that those movies they're stylish and they're moody and they're tense, but they all explode in the end. And it's all like all that tension and all that, like, what is this guy going to do? And is he going to hold it together? It's like that release of tension is like, there's a lack of control in it, right? And both of those characters, like Lee Marvin and Michael Caine in both those movies, both those characters are at a certain point in the movie, not just beyond redemption, but beyond like being alive when it's over. Like there's already a suggestion in Point Blank, which is a good example of like that he's already dead. Right? There's like a thing in Point Blank of like, is he dead? Is he actually dead? And this is all just like either playing out in his mind in the last moments of his consciousness, like what he would do if only he could, or he's a fucking ghost, but it's all like, it's never really answered, but there's enough ambiguity there to make it interesting. But that doesn't happen to Statham either, which I think is your point too, is that he doesn't push himself to a point where he doesn't care. And so the inevitable destruction that he's unleashing does not bother him. If anything, he does that first, which, by the way, I think is also a really interesting point you make about the idea of that all that violence and expertise gets him nowhere, and he's forced to do things in a different way, which, again, is like, that's not the beat that Ritchie wants, weirdly, in the movie, right? The beat that Ritchie wants is like Statham's like all that whole like, I'm too good for this, I'm all knowing, I'm all powerful, like I'm sitting on top of everything, like I'm already ahead of the game kind of a thing. But actually it should be like he's saying, I'm at the end of my tether, I don't know what else to do except, I guess, like I'll have to stop, I'll have to think, I'll have to watch, I'm not used to getting answers by watching. I usually like pick people up and hit them until they tell me what I want to know. It could be hit, and it could be hit like really easily and really well, but he doesn't want to do that for some reason. He wants to keep hitting the like Statham's the man beat in this scenario, like that whole like satisfying notion of he's much better than you think he is kind of a thing. You know, that moment of like, you think I'm a mild-mannered fucking whatever, but actually I'm a fucking killer. Like that moment over and over again. But that's not, like you're saying, he did that bit. So yeah.
Well, I also worry. And again, this is not the first time I've gone down the road of, you know, one of my screen idols, you know, maybe their real life encroaching on their screen personas to make their movies actually less enjoyable. Bruce Campbell. I've gone down this road before, but I do get the feeling that the Statham that made the movie Hummingbird / Redemption, which was a Statham who was like, you know, I know that I can be known as a B-movie ass kicker, but I also am interested in, you know, different stories and bringing my persona to, you know, real characters and character-driven pieces and working with interesting British writers and interesting British directors and doing something a bit different and a bit throwback and a bit weird. I think that Statham still exists somewhere in there, but I definitely think that this movie is a clash between that Statham, because I really do strongly suggest everyone goes back and watches Redemption Hummingbird again, because it's the best example we have of Statham like really trying something different and I think succeeding, and being a glimmer of him being able to be the Bob Hoskins of his generation. And I'm not exaggerating. There was a glimmer in Hummingbird where I'm like, if he stayed on this path, he could be the Hopkins of his generation. But because of the fact that movies like The Mechanic 2 and the Stallone one he took over that was meant to be Rambo 5 and ended up just being another...
Oh, the one with Franco.
Oh, it's such a piece of shit comparatively. I mean, Statham's fine in it, but whatever that movie was, I forget what it was called now. But that one and Mechanic 2, like, both failed. And not only that, but, like, Mechanic 2 was a seriously, like, low budget. I mean, I know we had fun with it, and I have watched it since, and it's fun, but it was a real, like, low budget shash. And I'm sure Statham found himself on set being like, what the fuck am I still doing here 20 years into my career or 15 years into my career, whatever. But then he did Spy, which was this big Hollywood movie. Then he got in the Fast and Furious franchise, you know, which obviously buoyed him to be like a bigger star than maybe he actually was. Do you know what I mean? Like he became like more of a big Hollywood star than maybe he was. Did the Expendables, all those. He started to be crop up in franchises because he realized that by himself, he's not making bank. But in these big franchise movies, you know, where he's playing an action lead or an action support, you know, people love it and people go on about it. And I think some of the glitz and glamour from that and some of the ego of that, especially by the time you get to like Hobbs and Shaw and him and The Rock, who notoriously clashed with Vin Diesel on Fast 8 and egos flared and it got all horrible. You know, by the time he's on set with The Rock and Rock is basically like, you know, Jason and me, this is our set and what we say goes and, you know, everyone is at our whim and blah, 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 blah. I think by the time you get to that stage, I think what you're seeing in this movie, a little bit, and I don't know this, but I got the feeling, was a little bit of Statham kind of being like, I'll do this much, Guy, but I'm not going to do this. And I walk away at the end unscathed and I'm not, you know, I wonder if there wasn't like...
Yeah, there feels a little bit like that to me. Because all that stuff about giving the money back to the victims, like the whole, like that whole bit was like, that felt shoehorned in. Because he's clearly supposed to be a psycho. And they don't, like, that's the point, is it's like, he's a psychopath. He's not like a well-drilled, you know, most of the people like Neeson, even Kane to an extent in Get Carter, they're supposed to be well-drilled, you know, well-oiled killing machines. And like the interesting thing about Taken is
Kane's more of a kind of
but the point
he's
about
a killing
Kane
machine, but he's also just a low-level enforcer. He's not anyone with
no, he is, but that's the point, right? Is it's like, but the point about Get Carter is what happens if a low-level enforcer has their own agenda? What if they don't just do what they're told anymore? Right. Then they are a well-oiled, well-drilled killing machine, but this time they've got a plan. And if you're not the one fitting in the plan, then maybe you're in fucking trouble. But the thing about Taken that's interesting, right, is that that's the idea of, well, the American dream or the American, you know, way of life suggests that, yeah, you know, you can go off and like kill a bunch of people and assassinate them and fuck around with other people's like economies and politics and countries and go over there and, you know, just do things that would drive anyone like completely out of their minds. Because of how horrific they are, but then you come back and you drive an SUV and you go to Walmart and you know what I mean, like that's as far as America, it's like, and we salute the veterans and, you know, and it's like, it's totally cool that you can do those things, and that's not in any way completely mad to think that that's possible, that they wouldn't be like. So anyway, but this is like, it's supposed to be, well, yes, they're like, it's soldiers playing at crime, right? And yes, they're like well drilled and well oiled, and that they do everything seamlessly and it all comes on. But they haven't gotten in a turf war. They haven't met a fucking psychopath yet, you know, that knows their turf better than them. And there's something there too with like Iraq and Afghanistan. It's like, well, what happens if you get in a fight with people who know the terrain better than you, kind of a thing. There's things that's interesting. But you're right. It does smack slightly of Statham saying, I don't want to be the psychopath that I need to be for this film to work. In fact, if you need that, then that's got to be one of them. And that's why Eastwood's got like the mad scar and like the look of Eastwood in the movie is perfect. But you're right, his character's in the wrong place. The psychopath is Statham. and he's like the fly in the ointment of their plan. That's what it is.
It also it needs to be, I think, and again, this is, I kind of lay the blame of this, and I hate to do this, but it's Statham. Like, I get that you see his men, the underlings, the guy with the amazing white hair and beard, who, by the way, has a phenomenal face. I love that guy.
Yeah. So weird that he wasn't in the car when Statham got in. I don't know, but there's something in me that was like, I wanted to see him. Like, again, that was a moment. It's like him driving away should land.
Yeah, it didn't.
He just gets in a car with some random dude. It's like, what the? Yeah, anyway.
But like, I know that there's that one point where he goes out and he's sharing a cigarette with the guy in the car, and he says it's getting really tough in there and children involved and blah, 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 blah. So we're meant to feel like, oh no, you know, Statham has taken his regular crime and like crimed it up to the max zone, right? We're meant to think like this has gone through the roof, and therefore we're being informed that what Statham is currently doing is different to what he would normally be doing. Right. Son. But we don't know that. It's not like
just standing in a room, isn't it? You're right. He's just standing.
It's not like
you're
Statham.
Totally right. They totally set that scene up, don't they? Him getting a cigarette, him like being really nervous outside and taking extra drags. You're right. That's totally to set up that he's about to go in somewhere really horrific. But they try and make the horror out to be like, oh no, it's the crimes that are going on that are horrific. But it's clearly supposed to be, you're right, what Statham is doing to them.
Right. And also the fact that so this is my point was meant to be, we never see the change in Statham, right? We never feel Statham's character carrying the weight of either what he's doing or the weight of the loss. It doesn't mean that he can't be single-minded and steely glazed and focused. I don't necessarily need him like weeping off to a corner to some blonde bird he just picked up in a bar or whatever. Like, I don't need that scene, but I need some feeling of change or some feeling of it starting to weigh heavy on him, or like you say, him just becoming a complete psychopath and everyone else around him being like, well, what the fuck happened? You know what I mean? Like, normally he's this benevolent, lovely crime boss, you know, whatever. And now he's like this ruthless, steely glazed killer. Like, what the fuck happened? But you don't really get that. You get the idea that he's always a steely-eyed, monosyllabic crime boss who just became slightly more so after his son died. Like, there's no...
No, I'd agree with that. And that's the thing, right? Presumably... Like,
I'm really talking this movie down, and I don't mean to, because I kind of
no.
At the same time, I kind of was disappointed with it.
No, I agree. Like, there's a bit, like, one of the really effective bits is when the other heist happens, and like they're telling the story of it, and it's like at the most exciting moment, like, what's going to happen? Statham gets out the back of the van. What's going to happen? And then it cuts back to him. You know, what's his face, Eddie Marsden, hearing the story, going, and they just walked away. Like, it was just like, it was such a great moment and a great scene, and that really lands. Like, the idea that all Statham does is like show his face, and the gang panic and run, right?
Well, but because what's meant to happen is that the gang doesn't necessarily know that he's gone undercover, and then
no. I know that, but that's not my point. What I'm saying is, that bit lands that he's so like, what is this guy's story that a gang just sees his face and runs for it? Like, what kind of a fucking dude is this? And then looking back on that scene, when you know who they are and that they work for him, all the rest of it, clearly the reason they just like turn away and run is that they can see in his face and his eyes and all that he's fucking gone. He's out of it. Like, I can't be here when he's like this. It's not like, hey, boss, what are you up to? Can we help? You know what I mean? Like, what's all this going on? No. It's just like they turn and they run. And clearly that's supposed to be because he is, you know, like you say, he's gone off the reservation. He's completely psycho, right? And that notion of him being out of control, so much so that even his like trusty lieutenant, when he sees his face, runs. isn't really, like you say, that change isn't depicted in Statham. He doesn't go from being controlled to being out of control. He's just slightly more controlled. In which case, that reaction doesn't quite make sense, and it is full of those things. And it feels like if Statham, that doesn't feel like a Statham choice. That feels like Statham pushing back against something that somebody wants him to do by not doing anything. You know what I mean? Statham didn't go, I'd like to remain the same all the way through the movie. That's what I think would work. It's like Ritchie going, I need you to do this. And Statham's going, no, I think I'd like to still be really cool. And like, I know, like I'm better than everything and I know what's going on. I want to be that guy. You know, I want to be the, when Liam Neeson, when the people realize they're fucking with the wrong dude. I want that moment for the whole film. Yeah, but you can't, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, no, I know, and it's really difficult because, and it feels a lot like Bruce Campbell in the sense that when I used to look at his career, even in the height of my fandom of him, there was still only like 2 or 3 films that I would ever really be like, these are really the good films, and then the rest of them were just like, didn't quite do it there. You didn't quite get there. You didn't quite, oh, you sleptwalked through that. Oh, you didn't do the business in that one. You know what I mean? With the odd glimmer. And Statham feels a bit like that. Like there's 3 or 4 Statham films that I would be like, okay, this is a guy with not just action chops, but a career ahead of him who can kind of do, you know, comedy and action and drama and British thrillers, you know, and blah, 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 blah. And there's like 2 or 3 movies you can point to where you're like, these are really good. And then there's a whole handful of movies that you're like, they're watchable, but they never quite, like, whatever reason, he's not quite getting there. You know what I mean? And it just feels like this one in particular, and I think the poster says it all. It's just like, it's Statham in a really nice 3-piece suit with a handkerchief in his pocket. And I'm like, this isn't telling me anything. Like, you can't imagine Bob Hoskins getting on the set of A Long Good Friday and being like, well, I'm only going to wear Armani suits. Sorry, fellas. Like, you know, he knows exactly who Harold Shand is, that he's a little guy trying to be, you know, above his station and play on the same level as America, while knowing full well he'll probably never really quite get there. And therefore he kind of has to, you know, yes, puff himself up a little bit, but also not look dressed to the nines all the time. Whereas Statham has no interest in necessarily figuring out who his character is. He's just like, I'm going to wear my $500 cardigan knit sweater in this scene, and I'm going to wear my $3,000 suit in this scene. And, you know, and if you look at like Statham's Instagrams, or you look at Statham's Facebook page, or you look at like stories written about Statham or whatever, it's all the same, you know, like very high cotton thread knitwear / suit wear that he wears in all his, you know, modeling photos and film interviews and stuff. And you're like, this is really just him. Like, he's just shown up and gone, no, I just wear like really comfortable cardigans, and that's what I'm going to wear in this scene. Or I wear like really expensive suits. And you kind of go, yeah, but the character isn't that. Unless the character is that, in which case, show me the difference when he goes undercover, and show me that him slumming it and trying to play more middle class and middle age and more schlubby. Like, show me that. Like, it just, I don't know, like maybe I'm looking too deep into a Guy Ritchie Jason Statham film called Wrath of Man, but I feel that especially with the title cards of like Scorched Earth and, you know, all this sort of stuff, and Ritchie really trying to put the beans in when it comes to nice set pieces and a score that's interesting and some 70s ideas, and
even like a lot of good foreshadowing in like some single shots. Like,
good foreshadowing.
When the truck pulls into the depot for the first time, like the way that it's framed and the noises and the clanking of the gates, you're like, this is going to be something. It's not something now, but I know this is going to be something. It feels like the truck's entering like an arena, you know, and which, thinking of it now, it's like, that's what it's supposed to be at the end, right? It's supposed to be like a post-apocalyptic, like rollerball kind of arena thing, right? It's supposed to be like, it's a bunch of blokes in a concrete bowl with heavily armed machine guns, and who's going to make it out alive kind of a thing, right? And that whole thing is like, that's set up with just the way a truck drives into a garage, right? So there's like, he really is doing great work. And when he when you talk through the flaws of the movie, you realize that it comes from the desire to protect an actor's reputation more than it does.
Maybe, I don't know. I mean, that's hypothesis.
No, but that for me makes the most sense of the flaws of the movie, because everything else is in exactly the right place and looks the right way, is like settles in the right way, and it's pointing in all the right directions, and feels to me like very closely, like you say, with those set pieces, just very closely guarded and watched and put together. And the things that are wrong with it seem to be wrong on the only benefit they have in being wrong is it serves the idea that Statham isn't a bad guy.
There's one other thing.
That's the only upside of the things that are wrong with the movie. The only upside is it makes Statham look better.
Yeah.
So that to me speaks volumes. I think.
The last thing I'll say, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, fair enough.
Is that
by the way, can I just say very quickly, much like what did we talk about last time?
1922.
Right. Much like 1922, and to a certain extent, even Willy's Wonderland, actually, I feel like we've had a really good conversation about the movie.
We have, yeah.
As in, I feel like I've learned a lot talking it through with you. I feel differently about it now than I did at the beginning, but not necessarily a bad way. I feel like I understand things a little better. I feel like I've just really enjoyed talking about the movie with you.
Yeah, me too. And I've actually solidified some opinions that after I watched it yesterday, I was just like, well, I know I'm disappointed, but I can't tell you right now because I'm too tired why or what exactly bothered me about it.
And I felt that way about the ending. I knew when I went to bed last night, I was like, I'm disappointed about the ending. I can't put my finger on why.
Yeah, and I feel like we figured some things out. The last thing I would say is, so that we don't put it all at Statham's door, I do think, especially for a movie like this, which purports to be in like America, but was so clearly filmed probably mostly in London or somewhere near it, because either everyone in the cast, aside from the smattering of Americans, everyone else in the cast are like British doing really bad American accents, apart from Statham, who they just decide to call the limey because they're like, whatever, it's just easier than explaining why Statham can't do an accent. But the one thing that they should have had, someone should have taken Ritchie's script, and someone in America should have taken Ritchie's script and rewritten it, because the first 15 minutes of dialogue where he's meant to be showing like, oh, we're all lads here in the locker room with the fucking Securicorps vans and we're all like pals and we've all got our little nicknames and stuff. It was so like Ritchie should never be allowed to write banter ever. Like Ritchie cannot write banter for Love Nor Money, apart from the fact that he drops English words all the way through that no American no American, by the way, would ever refer to a cash register as a till. Never. They wouldn't even know what a till was. So that's the first thing. They should have an American have rewritten all that stuff instead of McConaughey. Like, at least if McConaughey is saying till to like pal up to Statham, he should at least be like till, because that's what you guys call it, right? Rather than just dropping till as if that's what Americans say, because they don't say it. But aside from that, there is a full 15 minutes in the movie where Josh Hart, McConaughey, and Statham are all doing the most random banter ever. It's like, well, who keeps sandwiches in their locker, eh? Well, yeah, he's the kind of person. Your mother keeps sandwiches in her locker. Oh, your mother, eh? Like, it's all this kind of stuff for like the first 15 minutes. Like, that truck is a real, like, whatever. Did you shit your pants? Like, all the banter for the first 15 minutes. I was like, the fuck is this? Like, all the characters talked exactly the same. It was like watching, who's the fucking director? Oh, it's like, Nolan does the same thing. Like, all his characters say exactly the same thing. Only Nolan tries to look intelligent by having them all sound like they're reading phrase of the day calendar pull-offs. Whereas Ritchie tries to make every single one of his characters, even if they're security truck drivers from Los Angeles, sound like crappily written, low-level British words. Like they're all just like, oh, sandwiches, or your wife, like it was all that kind of stuff. What the fuck? Like, this isn't establishing anything. This is just people saying non-sequitur words thrown together. Well, hats and sandwiches. Well, like, do you know what I mean, though?
I didn't mean, yeah. I didn't mind that bit. I know what you mean, though, but I didn't mind it. I guess I was just enamored with it because I felt like I was drawn into it at that point. But I know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I tell you what it was. I was watching it and I was like, I really want to be charmed by this attempt at banter. Like this attempt, I want to be charmed by he pulls off like a picture someone's put up in his locker of like a naked man or whatever, and he gives it to McCann. He's like, oh, I was looking for him. And he's like, oh, taking him out for a date then. Oh yeah, men and men. Oh yeah, that's fine. Like all that. I was just like, what is this? No one talks like that. And it was just so, I wanted to be charmed by it. I wanted to watch it and be like, oh, Richie, you big ham. But it wasn't good enough banter. Like it wasn't bad enough that you just outright hated it, but it wasn't, or like were bemused by it. And it wasn't good enough to be charming. It was just right in that sweet spot of like I did watch the first 10 minutes kind of with a face on like what? What is anyone saying? Because you've got people making lots of jokes and stuff, and then Statham occasionally goes, and you're like, what? Speak up. So, your mum, whatever. You're like, your mum, what? Like, it was just, that's what the whole movie was. The whole first 15 minutes of the movie was like, and it was all like, oh yeah, Vera on the tills got moist when she saw Statham. Look, Vera on the tills. The fuck is anyone talking about? It was just nonsense. I mean, it was fine. It was Ritchie nonsense. But I'm like, considering the broody, hyper-violent tone the movie then took, I was that first 10 minutes of everyone being nudge, nudge, wink, wink. It just didn't make any sense with hindsight.
Yeah, fair enough.
Also, can you imagine being Josh Hartnett and this is what your career has come to? Playing eighth fiddle in a Jason Statham B movie.
Yeah, that was another bit of casting, but I liked it though.
Well, I liked it because I suppose you kept thinking that the Americans were suddenly going to like be the heroes, and all the Americans turned out to be like cowards or shits. And Statham ended up being the only one that was sort of remotely competent, and he was a psychopath. Weird movie, but I did enjoy it. But it's not one that I'll put in again too soon. But I have to say, being someone who, when like Lock, Stock first came out, poo-pooed Ritchie rather heavily because of my love of Long Good Friday and Mona Lisa and some of those early Hoskins stuff. I think he's grown into a really, really strong visual director. I think he's to me what I wish Nolan was. Nolan disappears up his own ass time and time again. Nolan knows how to film a scene, but gets so fucking wrapped up in how much Nolan he can make it, he loses sight of it. Ritchie is just on the cusp of being able to direct a set piece as good as anything Nolan's done, but keep it reined in enough that it doesn't disappear up its own arsehole. And for that reason, I'm actually really enjoying Ritchie's movies these days. And I totally buy into what you say about like the Sherlock Holmes and the Man from U.N.C.L.E. and the King Arthurs, because if you want like, it's not a big blockbuster, but if you want kind of a second tier blockbuster that makes little to no sense, but has some really fun casting and some balls to the wall, mad set pieces, Ritchie is your guy. I'd take him over fucking Hack Snyder, Nolan, or the fucking guy who does all the Transformers movies, Michael Bay. I'd take fucking Ritchie over any of those guys. And I'm happy about that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I'd agree with that. Well, it was fun talking to you about it. We've been going on about it for a while now, but I really enjoyed talking to you about it. It was really cool.
People get good bang for their buck with the After Movie Diner.
That's true. No
one can ever deny that. All right, Chief. Well, next week I get
your pick. Yeah,
next week I get to pick a modern horror again. So I will.
You don't have to. You know that, right? If you're not in the mood for it, like come Monday or Tuesday next week, you want to do something else, we can do that.
No, true. And I'll definitely look on the streaming services as to what new films are going straight to streaming, and let you
can
know.
do whatever you like. Don't worry about whatever you fancy, mate.
No, but I'm definitely one. I definitely like the idea of one episode that's a new horror and one episode that's like this, because then we get to see a whole bunch of cool stuff, and I get to reignite my love of a genre that I feel I have neglected.
Fair enough, mate. I look forward to it.
So I love it. All right, man. Chocks away. Thanks ever so much. This was a barnstormer of an episode. I enjoyed it a lot.
Me too, man.
And to play us out, it is a cut from my new album, Conspiracy Theories, which is available right now on Bandcamp. That's miskplumbingfixtures.bandcamp.com. That's MISC plumbingfixtures.bandcamp.com. If you want to support the After Movie Diner, but also get some music out of it, then go over to Bandcamp, miskplumbingfixtures.bandcamp.com, and pick up an album or 5. This track is from Conspiracy Theories. Hope you like it.
Everything here